Oh, snap. What up, guys? What it do? What it do? Bobo here. Thanks for joining me for a little Trilogies and Beyond. Another BrassReel tonight live streams. Going to be talking about none other than the Fast and Furious franchise. Boy, I'm already starting good. I promise I'm not been drinking. And I got my boy Clinto Darko joining me for this one. This is one he's been begging to talk about. So, Clinto, what it do?
What's up, Bobby? How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. Super stoked about this.
Oh, dude. So what do you think about that? Got that overlay, you know? I was trying to find some like royalty-free like rap music that would sound sort of kind of fitting for it. But the thing about these movies is that it's just hip hop throughout the ages. So like if you're watching the first movie and the second movie, the hip hop in that movie is totally different than the hip hop you're hearing later on, you know, and throughout it's all changes because it's been over 20 years now.
Dude, what's great? What does a great indicate? Like, example of that, I guess I should say, is that in the first movie, there's a song when they're at the Toretto's restaurant, and the song's like, it's like, ain't both done deep enough. But anyway, okay, that song is actually a new metal song by a band that never made it. And what's on the soundtrack and what's in the movie, the hip hop version of it, is a remix. It's not even the version that was ever released.
So it was just like, was it like a famous songwriter or something that was trying to like
get
that song released or something?
It's nothing. It's just a band that was local to the area that got in. The song was called Deep Enough. Like if you go look up Deep Enough on
But how did it go from new metal to hip hop? Was it the same band? They just did a hip hop version?
No, it's just a DJ who remixed it for the soundtrack.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, it's
that's all it is.
Do you remember? I remember exactly where I was when I first saw this first movie, and I'll be straight up.
Me too.
I wasn't fully into this. Like I wasn't all about it because the first one was really about cars. You know what I mean? But I remember watching it at a bunch of my friends' house that I worked with at the Outback. And this one dude, it was his house. And we were all hanging out at their house all the time. And he had a couple roommates, but it was sort of like the go-to place to go hang out. And dude, he watched it like 3 times in a row. And
you got to remember the time period this is, though. Like, this is when DVDs first came out. And so people didn't have lots of them, and there weren't lots of options. And people were dropping cable movie channels in lieu of owning a DVD, but these things were all like $29.
Dude, I rewatched DVDs like crazy. I remember my first few were like Gladiator, Meet the Parents, things like that. But I'm talking about the credits would hit and he would start it over.
Dude, I used to watch this once.
His name was Zeno.
A week, like religiously. Okay.
I get that. I could see even once a day, but 3 times in a row. Jesus.
That's dedication. But I mean, there's something about this movie, and you brought up cars. Okay. So when I was young, back, before you knew me, back before, whatever, children, careers, everything else, I was a car guy. And like when this movie came out, I owned a 1986 SBO Mustang, which was a Turbo 4. I traded or sold rather a V8 Mustang I had. First car I ever had was a 64 and a half with a 260 in it. And then like I went up from that. But this 86 Mustang I had, we did all kinds of stuff too. My dad and I did. And like, I had a turbo on there that like shot out like 16 PSI. And all of that's happening at the time this movie like it was really coming out. And so I've got it was the perfect storm for me. I mean, it was the perfect storm for me.
Well, it's just a testament to how much your upbringing has to do with kind of what you're into a little bit, because my dad wasn't into cars at all.
So my dad's still really, really into cars. I mean, shoot, like even right now, I don't have a normal truck. Like I've got the Adrenaline, the SVT version. So like, that's always kind of been a thing in my family is like is having something. Like I've owned, I think, like 5 or 6 Mustangs. I've had a Cobra. Like,
now look, having a good truck and stuff like that on the ranch, but I grew up with horse. So like he would get a good truck that had a good engine that could haul and stuff like that. That was it.
Yeah.
He wasn't worried about no performance. I mean, I guess that's a performance in its
for
own
sure.
right.
I mean,
But
like that's kind of the interesting thing about the way that my dad was. My dad's a very much a classic kind of guy. Like he wants to go back to the way it looked rolling off the showroom floor, and like he cares more about how the car was when it came out than modding the car to look like the ideal version of said model. So that was definitely a list. But there was, okay, so we were talking also
what are you doing?
for everybody else. Fidgeting.
I can't. You're
For
distracting
everybody.
me. What is that?
Oh, no. It was a cigar trimmer, of all things. But like, so for all those who don't know out there, like Bobby, I've been talking to him the last couple of days. I've been following the Lord of the Rings trilogy because it's back in theaters currently. And what I realized today, and it's interesting you bring this up, is the best friend I had during this time hated brainy things that you thought about, but loved bananas action. And so I think that all the love and appreciation I should have had for Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers actually went to Fast and the Furious and Too Fast, Too Furious, just based on who I was hanging out with this time.
But look, you are what you eat and you are who you're around. In fact, one of the things that and I'm just going to foreshadow with this one with Tokyo Drift. Now, I don't hate the movie. It's just not, it's one of the ones that I just don't really care to rewatch. And it just doesn't do all that much for me. But you did get Han out of it. We did get Justin Lin out of it. And Han does have some one-liners that come back later on, but he talks about, you're around the people that like choosing the people that you're around make you find out who you are.
See, that's it. You just listed all the reasons I love it is because you say how disconnected it is. It's disconnected in every way except for the fact that it shows how rightfully connected Dom and Han are.
Sure. But okay, we'll get to that when we get to part 3. What I was saying about that, though, is that is a very true statement as far as you were a product of who you were around. And I was the same thing, like I hung out with those guys after work and after the Outback, and we get off late at night and go to somebody's house and chill and party. And sometimes a movie would get put on. And that was one of these occasions. I was much more into, Dusk Till Dawn, Tarantino shit, Face Off, Con Air, stuff like that. The car thing, the cars just was never a big deal to me. However, when I watched this movie at their house, I was surprised at how good it was. So I wasn't pumped up about it. I wasn't all like all these people were like, bro, you see the Fast and the Furious, man, those cars, dog. And like, for me, my brain just doesn't work that way. So I was just thinking it was a car racing movie, whatever. Once I saw it and I realized there was way more to it, and there was a story and there was this whole family element, and there was like, oh, that's a heist movie. It's a heist movie and they love cars and there's a lot of cars, but it's actually a heist movie. I thought that turned it into, I was like, this is pretty cool. I had no clue they were going to go so far with it as far as the sequels. And I didn't even think they would make a sequel because I just didn't think it was that type of movie, but I was so wrong,
Man, tell me about it. So where do you want to start with this, dude? Like I can go.
I think first off, I think, you have to kind of say that the first one is the best one, because it implemented all the things about the franchise we really love. Now, obviously, it was a very realistic movie then. There was nothing really unrealistic about that movie. There may have been 1 or 2 moments where a car does a cool, extravagant stunt that was probably pulled off. They just did it time and time again to finally catch it on film. You know what I mean? Fast forward to now where almost all the stunts are CG'd and, there's no real things happening. So I think that the first one is the best one. It launched a ton of people's careers. I think Jordana Brewster had already kind of been having a career occasionally here and there with stuff, but Paul, Vin, and Michelle Rodriguez, all 3 of them, they were already in the game, but it blew them up, Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it did more for Vin Diesel than it did anybody else. Because he has he's in Boiler Room and he's in, which is kind of like an off the radar movie at that point.
But yeah, that was before Fast and the Furious.
That's what I'm saying. And and Riddick, right? Like, or whatever, Pitch Black. Is what it was called.
Yeah.
But no, I hardly knew anybody who had seen Pitch Black when that was on DVD. Like I
Yeah, it
remember
was a
being,
sleeper.
and so this movie put Vin Diesel like into the limelight. But I feel like Paul Walker was already knocking on that door, like
He was, but I
Varsity
mean,
Blues,
sure.
like
No, that
the
was
Skulls. I know that was before this.
okay. So forgive me, but Varsity Blues was also one of those other ones that I just never jumped on that full train. I saw it a couple times, but Paul Walker was in that also with James Vanderbeek, or
Yeah, he plays Lance Harbor. He's the quarterback that gets hurt.
okay, that's right. It's just been a while. Again, I remember Ali Larder in that movie for sure.
What about Lance's ride to Florida State?
Yeah, I don't want your life, but that's in so many movies besides Varsity Blues of them just making fun of that line in Varsity
Varsity
Blues.
Blues. Yeah.
But going back to this, I definitely, I love the first one. I'd say it's probably the best. I can't say that there's a ton of like memorable. I say it's the best in the sense of just an all around film that's like even 30 more years from now, you're going to be able to watch this and be like, damn, that's a good movie, you know? Whereas there's certain ones in the middle of it where it's just like, oh, whoa, I'm not sure how that's going to age. But I don't know if there's any moments to where I was just like, dude, you remember that part in part one when I just feel like it was sort of like it painted this picture of these people and this is what their lives are like. And they do some sort of under the table dangerous shit with some cars and some illegal things. And so it was cool. It just kind of painted this picture. I feel like 4 truly is where I started having memorable moments, blockbuster summer action MCU tier level moments. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, but again, those were basing the idea off of this franchise in a different direction completely. Whereas I don't think that the first movie was ever like, oh man, just wait till we're able to put submarines under frozen lakes. I don't think they were ever thinking that in the beginning.
Oh man.
Sorry, I just took the rails there for a little bit, but what do you think as
No,
far
there's
as
not
what
a
I'm
chance.
saying?
There's not a chance they were. I think that they even say as much. Like if you look into the series and kind of look at like how it happens, like when Vin Diesel left the first one, he left it and didn't want to do a sequel. He turned down 20 million to do Too Fast, Too Furious because he
Which is
thought it would be a,
huge, especially for that time, and that's huge for today.
that's huge for that time. That's huge for today. That's huge for he was then. But you
Mm-hmm.
have to remember also at this point, this is kind of weird how this all turns in on itself. It's kind of a fascinating journey. But like Vin at this point really believes it will be a cult classic, something that if it's left there, it will just be a cult classic type movie. And Vin at this point, he wants to be like somebody in Hollywood, like this artistic, like person that really leaves his mark. And I don't think that it had crossed his mind yet that there was this cast of characters out there that would leave a mark that would be bigger than anything he would do, in an art house type film,
Right,
like an
right.
artisan type way.
He didn't understand the and just I'm not trying to like pigeonhole it into a culture. I'm just saying this is what it is because this is also kind of what it markets to. That sort of neighborhood that's not even middle class, but the people that saved up a bunch when they're young and they finally got that first car and they pimp it out and they take care of it like you would never believe because it's their pride and joy. They worked their life for it and they get into a little street racing and all that. You know what I mean? It definitely marketed towards that culture. And I don't think that exactly what you're saying. I don't think that Vin Diesel realized that there was a whole world of people that related to this crew on the screen.
Right.
You know what I'm
You're
saying?
right.
He didn't realize that that world actually did exist. And they were like, finally, they made a movie about us people, and like
He's
the car people, the underground people that live in the neighborhood, in the hood, kind of.
the only experience that Vin had with it was so when they were getting ready to start filming, him and Paul Walker went and caught a couple street races in downtown Los Angeles. Like, but nobody knew who they were, so they were just like,
They were
able
able
to
to
blend
sift.
in. Right. And the cops came and busted it, right? Helicopters, all that other stuff. and him and Vin Diesel take off running down some alley, laughing about how what if they get arrested, out here
Doing research for a movie.
just doing research for a movie. And so
But
that evidently is the day and the moment they became like thick as thieves, is like that right there.
Well, and I'm sure that it was probably crossing their minds in that moment of like when they're seeing all this real life stuff happening because of these street races and helicopters and like, man, maybe there is something to this movie that could work, like.
Yeah, for sure. But Paul grasped it, and that's something that he pushed and pursued Too Fast, Too Furious. And when Vin didn't do it, he was disappointed because he thought this had franchise potential. It's like,
well, I'm sure that I knew that Vin, everything you said about him, the wanting it to just be a cult classic, the original and all that, just be like it is. I knew that he wanted that, and I knew that Paul was definitely trying to keep it going. But I really thought that after the second one, they would do, since I saw that they were doing a Too Fast, Too Furious, which to me is, it's hard to get. It's like a party movie. Put it on the background when you're throwing a party. But I really thought that maybe Vin's going to come up and we're going to see like a solo movie with him, since Paul, this was his solo movie. And then when I saw that this come out, I was just like, what?
That's what initially was planned for Tokyo Drift, and what the initial screenplay idea that kicked around, the thing that got it greenlit actually, was they were going to have a story about Dom, where Dom had a friend in Tokyo, like overseas, because they were doing drift racing. And the guy who wrote this one was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. We should pitch this. And so like they saw this drift racing going on. But the thing is that what was also happening at that time was one of the writer's strikes. Like, and two movies in this franchise like suffer this fate. This one,
because there's been a few different writer strikes.
Sure. So the idea that was in there wasn't able to like really keep getting pushed forward as much as they wanted. And Vin Diesel also at the time was really sold on going all in on the Chronicles of Riddick. Like that was his plan.
Yeah.
And so what he did was he agreed to appear in Tokyo Drift however long he could in exchange for the rights to Riddick. And he also, at this point, took on, as a sweetener, took on like the rights to produce any future Fast and Furious project. So Tokyo Drift happens, and it was originally going to be just a straight to DVD movie. But like, yeah, that was the original plan. But when Vin Diesel agreed to appear in it, it increased the budget and then also got it put in theaters. The thing was that Vin Diesel was barely in it.
Yeah, he's in it for like 5 seconds, maybe.
Exactly. 8 seconds or less, right? Those 10 seconds or less, I'm in Tokyo Drift.
Well, yeah. Well, was he? But even then, I just feel like, I'm sorry, man. When I'm watching the movie, I feel like that they're trying to sell a new property of characters to me, and I feel it's like it's so disconnected even from the get go. Like again, there's beautiful camera shots in it. You know, it's cool to see what's his name from Home Improvement getting that race and car wreck in the beginning.
Brad from Home Improvement.
But like the guy that. I'm sorry, man. The country accent is just too. That might be really how he talks, but it just sounds too over the top for me.
He definitely does talk very close to that in real life. If you ever go watch it,
I don't want to dog on the guy. There's just chemistry throughout the film and everything with the characters. It just doesn't really work all that well for me. And dude, it's too much like part 2, in my opinion, because they run through hip hop song after hip hop song. There's more hip hop music in the movie than there is actual score. And even while they're doing races and stuff, like that first race, it's all to ball with the ball,
that's right.
So I love hip hop and music, and I love songs and movies, like Forrest Gump. Golly, it's got just song after song in it, but it's done in a way to where it just truly works well. And in this one, it goes from one moment to another. And then like when they first see all those new cars that are all souped up and they're playing them, You know,
I
and it's
love
like
that part, actually.
I do. It's just too gimmicky. It's too I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It's just too teeny. I don't know. It's just got this.
Okay, but here's what I like about it, though. All right, maybe think about it from this perspective. Of all of the movies of all time that have had those gimmicky, flashy, like you were talking about, that whistling song, golly, that sticks out so much to me from this movie. But like, of all the times it's been done, including in this franchise, which is Too Fast, Too Furious, and Tokyo Drift, plus some scenes. They always give you like a scene here and there. Like when they're in Rio and they go racing for cars, like that the intro is a lot like what you just described. Like that's part of this skill, baby. Like that's part of this whole franchise. Like and it's just polished up versions of what all of the introductions were like in the first one. And in the second one, it's almost there. It's a little bit better. But Justin Lin out John Singleton in Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe what it was just. And look, I bet you what it is too was, and Dwayne Asher, I'm going to get to your comment here in 1 second, man. But what I think it was is that the studio was just like, hey, this is what we need you to do, Justin Lin. And he was like a breakout director that was wanting to, he was like, all right, cool. I'll do it, you know, and I'll do it well. And again, it's shot well. It's a tight, as far as like, you know, you can't look at it and watch it and pick apart scenes. You know what I mean? It's not that.
It's a
That's not what
beautiful
I don't.
movie.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying that I don't like about it. It's just the way it feels. It's very rap video and commercially for me. And it's part of what I didn't like about the second one. And again, all this coming off of the first movie, which I think was a legitimately good, interesting story that I wanted to see what happened in the end. The end of part 2 and 3, I didn't care. I didn't.
So, some of the other interesting things before we leave part 3 here, all of that, it was illegal to shoot in China and in Japan at that point, right? So they couldn't go over to overseas and shoot. They had to dress up Los Angeles to look like it. And so
Just put a bunch of neon everywhere.
Basically, everything you're seeing, they had to shoot on like a very limited schedule, and the entire budget was taken up with like the scene where they're drifting through the crowd.
Yeah.
Right where Han dies, you know, like that right there was evidently the most expensive scene in the movie. Like gave it like 20% of its budget just because of having to shut down everything at night to film it.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that, but I mean, it makes sense because if you wouldn't have told me that, I wouldn't. That's one thing it doesn't. I don't think that. Oh, they're definitely not in Japan. Like I don't think that at all. So I mean, they did a good job at that.
They did a great job, man. Like I'm telling you, it's a beautiful movie. Like I challenge anybody to watch it and not tell me that there aren't some shots that are just absolutely like captivating.
Hey, real quick, Dwayne Asher. Yeah, you say, hey, can you please do a review of the movie called Home Movie in 2008? Yeah, I actually, you know, I'll talk about that sometime coming up soon. I have seen that actually. It's a creepy movie. But yeah, I'll give that a talk at some point down the road. But thanks for joining the stream, man. And also got my buddy Matt Pilcher here saying, wasn't Vin Diesel pressured by the studios to do part 2 for Fast, Triple X, and Pitch Black at the same time, and he chose Pitch Black? Yeah, that's actually what Clint was just talking about. That's pretty much exactly what he just said, and he was just thinking he had it planned out for other things for his career. And look, obviously he's had a career and he's doing okay, but I do think that man, if he would have done part 2, what do you think would have happened?
Not this. Like everything happened as it should, because what's, you know, there's a little bit more interesting, you know, when you're getting to the fleshing out of this franchise to what it became, because after part 3, Vin Diesel's like, okay, I'm going to do part 4. We're going to take it back to its roots, because when he was on set, the one day he was on set with Justin Lin, they hit it off because they were both Dungeons and Dragons fans. And so they got together later that summer to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, and then they forced the bond. Yeah, I mean, hey, Dungeons and Dragons is serious shit, man. You got people to remain friends for life over Dungeons and Dragons.
For sure. And so, like, all that happens. They flesh it out. And the studio won't, you know, they're going to do it. But the only way that they'll do it with a budget is if Paul Walker agrees to come on. And so Vin goes to Paul and he's like, man, they ran that thing like off into Tokyo Driftland. Nobody cares anymore. And he's like,
I thought it was done. I literally thought it was over, and it was. Let's see here. It was 3 years between Fast and Furious, or for Tokyo Drift and Fast and Furious Part 4.
but something big happened after Tokyo Drift was made that enabled movies like Fast and Furious to be made. And that was Batman Begins came out. And it re-kickstarted the soft reboot or hard
So
reboot.
you think that but yeah, but that was, you think Batman Begins is responsible for Fast and Furious 4 getting made?
Movies like this happening, yes, all of them. Like Batman Begins changed Hollywood. Like the Dark Knight trilogy changed everything, not just comic book movies. And this is one of the examples. I'm not just pulling this out of my ass either. Like this is stuff you can go verifiably find.
No, I'm with you.
And so like because of
I'm reading stuff while I'm listening to you.
Got you. The Justin Lin, Vin Diesel hanging out, right? Like that conversation and what it fostered into. Vin Diesel goes straight to Paul Walker and is like, yo, it's going to be Brian and Dom. This is going to be a soft reboot, and we're going to make another one right after it. But we have to set the stage first. So they made this one kind of underwhelming at first. And then in between the two movies, like when they were almost done, because they filmed these two movies basically back to back. And like when they're almost done with Fast 5, Vin Diesel checks on his Facebook and saw that he had like 17,000 comments begging to bring Letty back. So he includes her at the end of Part 5 in Hobbs's little file, like slips that in. Like there's an entire like Reddit forum that you can find that talks about how Vin Diesel's Facebook shaped the future of Fast and Furious.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. But because of Part 4, Part 4 is what made me actually like the franchise. Because up until this, I thought the first one was a good movie, the other two sucked. That's what I thought at the time. Now I give the other two a little bit of grace, but they're kind of my least favorite to watch. But I feel like it feels like they had a plan from Part 4. You're saying that he was done with Letty and they just decided to add her in as they started Part 5?
That was a 4 to 5. No, that was a into 5 into 6 transition.
That's what I'm saying. Like as they're doing 5, they're like, we need to bring her back. Like they never planned that in Part 4.
They didn't. And like they also knew they were like that they did at some point.
You know what I'm saying? Like killing, like for example, killing someone. Let's say it's just a trilogy, because 4, 5, and 6 are clearly like they feel like a trilogy. Sure. So let's say if you have a character in the Part 1 of a trilogy that's a big deal, and then they get killed, and then you bring them back in the third one, that feels planned. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that this. I think you're right. You know what I'm saying? I know you've been doing your research, and it's just they had me fooled. I really thought that they planned 4, 5, and 6 out,
dude. If you watch this, like I'm telling you, and like for all you guys out there, when Bobby and I first kicked around this idea, I was like, all right, I'm going to go through the franchise. But I went through the franchise in reverse order. So
yeah, that's funny.
9 Hobbs and Shaw, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so, in between 4 and 3, I watched Los Bandoleros also. But like
what is that?
That's the mini movie that sets up Part 4, the Vin Diesel short called Los Bandoleros.
I never knew anything about it. I probably own it on Blu-ray. It's probably on my.
I bet it's in there. I bet it's in that box set.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet it's in there. And dude, if you haven't seen that, you should watch it. It's like under 20 minutes, but you meet the guys who we end up in Part 9 finding out came from his time in prison. But you meet those guys. Han comes back in this.
Why didn't they just put that into some movies and stuff? But that, I mean, I'm just going to edit that into Part 4 and make that a movie. Like put it as a part of the movie.
It's no different than the Jurassic World Dominion Colin Trevorrow, whatever.
Right.
Short.
Right. Now I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
So, but okay. So we're kind of through that. That's kind of the history of it. Then like, obviously like from 5 on, that's kind of its own story. Like
Well, see, but for me, I feel like the true love that I have for this franchise, and it doesn't even exist anymore for the franchise like it did for a while. For me,
yeah.
it's 4, 5, and 6, and I think that 4 is the best one of the entire franchise.
I
I
think that for 4, 5, and 6, I agree with you. That's your sweet spot for sure in this
fuck
franchise.
yeah.
And like to me, it's 5. Like 5 is the
5 is
crown jewel.
dope, dude. I'm not look, 4, 5, and 6 are all A pluses in my book. Like
Yeah,
I know
I
people
mean,
are like, really? An A plus for a fast? Yes, those
yeah,
movies
for
are A
sure.
pluses.
4 is and you actually kind of ignited this in my head when I was going back through my rewatch, and you talked about how 4 was a revenge movie. And like it made me kind of watch it with different eyes, instead of just seeing it as a sleek, like a slate cleaner, which is how I kind of viewed it. But like when you look at it as Dom's revenge story,
It turns into him to a different person, so therefore the franchise is different now moving forward.
absolutely, that's great. I mean, you're not going to get if somebody told me 4 was their favorite, 5 was their favorite, 6 was their favorite. Any juggling of those three, as long as
Sure.
those three are at the top of the list, like I'm not going to have any arguments with any of
Yeah,
them.
and they still, juggle with him with Paul Walker and the whole cop thing back and forth, and then him being like,
Sure.
you know what, F the police, and
Mm-hmm.
then
No,
uh,
like the relationship between Dom and Brian is very much earned. Like those
yeah,
three, those two guys spend not just part 1, but also Brian juggles with it in part 2. But in part 4, the back and forth between them is palpable, man. It's
oh for
much
sure.
more dynamic and gripping than it is in part 1 even.
And then you got the oh boy, the other one, the dude that ends up, selling them out, but it was their friend for a while. Remember when they're trying to go back to the place where they're being harbored? And you got the dude with
Yeah.
the white guy with the short hair. He looks kind of military-ish. He's got the tank top on, and he ends up selling them out.
Oh,
But
you're talking about
I
in
can't
part
remember his
5?
name
What are
for
you talking
some
about?
reason. Yeah, but I'm just saying that whole thing starts transpiring everything, and because of all that, it's even Paul Walker's like siding with him for a second, but then later on, it's like because he was bad, it brings him and Dom even closer than they had already become, and then
Yeah. Oh,
uh,
that's so true, bro. So true. Like part 5, part 6 is my personal favorite. I don't think it's the best one, but it's my personal favorite because The Rock and Vin Diesel and everybody's on the same side.
and
Like,
you got that whole jet on the runway scene at the end, which is awesome. Which is where they really started to be like, all right, I think they're going a little. Um, man, that's weird. I don't know. I lost you, bud. I lost myself for a second there too. Uh-oh, you froze up. You froze up in the funniest looking pic too. Yo, you there? Okay, well, uh, man, I was right in the middle of talking about part 6, just talking about how in part 6 they do when they're in the airport and that plane's at the end and it's on the runway and just they're rolling the cars in and out, in and out. It definitely goes off the rails. There you are.
yeah, yeah.
So
I don't know when.
what I was saying is that look at this. Look at that pic of you, huh? How great is that? Cheese. So, but because part 6, even though it was starting to get a little unrealistic with that whole plane scene at the end, it still was like it was the ending scene, and it was all right. And the whole movie wasn't like that. It was just like, oh boy, they really did it on this ending grand Indiana Jones s type scene. But
Okay,
then
like it's still a lot of practical effects in there, though. That's the
yeah,
cool
no,
part.
but that's what I'm saying. It's all still, you still love it and buy it. By the end of that one, you're still like, well, they almost went there, but it still was badass.
The
You know?
only thing it was the length of the runway. Like, had
They
that
ain't no
been
runway that
shorter,
long.
yeah, that's a 30-mile runway, man. Like,
Yeah,
like,
that is
but
funny.
it's the length of the runway is the only thing that was there. But like in earlier in the movie, when Dom takes off and catches Letty across the bridge, when he like propels himself out of the
Yeah,
car.
and then he lands on.
See, the thing is leading
Which he
into
does that again,
moment,
which he does that again with another person in F9. Go ahead.
That's true. And when he's leading into that moment, though, right? Like the tank that comes out of the military vessel and the tank crushing all those cars, all that's real. Like every single bit of that's real.
And that's why you're having so much fun when you're watching it, because it feels the way you felt when you were watching things like Con Air and The Rock and Face Off, real freaking explosions.
What's crazy about the Fast Five, like, going back to that, is the bank vault scene, dude. They filmed that bank vault destroying all that stuff,
dude. And that was and that's where what I love about 4, 5, and 6 is that they were one-upping the past movie with these cool chase scenes / events or stunts, and they were doing it one up in the past movie without being ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's at the very end of 6 where it's just like, ooh, you guys are okay. A little.
And here's where the downfall, if you want to have it. Now, before I say downfall of the series, you have to understand.
Real quick though, one thing we haven't mentioned is, I can't believe I haven't, is that 4, 5, and 6 also brought us the elegance and the grace of the goddess who is Gal Gadot. So
true.
She's in my top 5. True. So just saying that, she's awesome in those. I love her. I'm not saying that she's like an award-winning performance in those movies, but God, just love her. She's such a sweetheart. She's adorable. I just want to eat her up. Anyways.
And she's great with Han, man.
Like, their relationship is beautiful. It's so you want to be Han.
Part, man. Like I'm about to jump ahead to 7 here.
Okay, well, I mean, we were talking about 4, 5, and 6, and so
no, I mean, but it was going to be related to what you said, but I feel like I cannot explain this enough to anybody. Like for anybody who hasn't seen 4, 5, and 6, and where I think that it's important to have seen 1, 2, and 3, but to really be able to feel it in 4, 5, and 6, but is how they somehow found the perfect roles for actors like Tyrese Gibson, Chris Bridges, Gal Gadot, Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, even Dwayne Johnson. All of these roles they're playing, I feel like are their prime apex character arcs. Like, in anything. Like, these are the best this is the best and most believable acting I've seen most of these people do. That's what's kind of so tragic to me about part 9 and 8, which I should throw this out there. I still love 9 and 8 and I've seen them multiple times, right? And I'm going to watch them multiple more. But I don't buy Dom's character as much as I do in 4, 5. Like in 4, 5, and 6, bro, he is believable. Like
4, 5, and 6 were before Guardians of the Galaxy, before Marvel.
That's true.
No, I'm with you though. He turns and like, I'm not dogging on you, Vin. I'm really not.
I know.
It's just the way it comes off a little bit more phoning it in 8 and 9 than it in 4, 5, and 6. It's like, dude, you better watch out. That's Dom, brother. That's Toretto. You better watch out. And then in 8 and 9, it seems a little like, I'm back. And I'm not dogging on him, because there's plenty of moments that he's badass in it, but like not like he was in 4, 5, and 6, or in 1 as well, or in 7 too. But Matt said, as long as Jordana Brewster and Ja Rule are in every movie, I'm good. Now Ja Rule's in the second one, right?
No, he's only in the first one, and the reason he wasn't in the second one is John Singleton went to him right after Tyrese was cast and was like, we need a third for the movie. Do you want to come back and reprise your role? And Ja Rule asked for $30 million. And John Singleton laughed him out of the room. All right. And what's funny is his stupid little demand, when he should have asked for $1 million or $2 million to be in that role, literally cost him all of the money that Ludacris has made moving forward.
Jesus, that's hilarious, dude. $30 million. It's like, I don't know, Schwarzenegger wasn't even making $30 million a movie. And we're talking about starring roles in movies like Terminator. Ja Rule, $30 million for it's hilarious.
Exactly. That's a great Hollywood story.
He said that's where he was going. Thanks.
No problem.
Derby Gaming said, so why was the third film made again? Oh, see, we got somebody that agrees with me on that one.
It was made because because of what it was supposed to be originally. It was supposed to be the return of Dom's story. And then Vin Diesel got strung up doing other projects, and they'd already put together money for the project. And so they had to do something.
No, I know.
And
I think he was just, he didn't.
I agree. I agree, but I'm an apologist for the third one, man. Like,
yeah, no, I know. And look, I don't want you to, if you feel the way you feel, it's like me, man, not having any shame about certain things, you know, like Dirty Dancing and Pretty Woman. Love those movies. Watch them all the time. I don't care. So with that being said, I was really looking forward to part 7 because of how good part 4 just, I didn't know that I was going to like it that much. And then when 5 came out, I was just like, Paul Walker's the coolest dude on the planet. Yeah. And then when 6 came out, it was just like, dude, I love all this crew, this family, this Fast and Furious crew. It was great. And then Fast 5, let's not forget about the idea of that it was actually 5 of them in a crew for a little bit of the movie. So it does make sense that they called it Fast 5, which a lot of people are like, that's kind of stupid. Same thing with Furious 7. It makes sense because there were 7 of them in a crew and they were mad about some shit. So I was so pumped up about that one, dude. And then obviously we get the terrible news that the late, great Paul Walker passes away in a car accident. I have
a couple thoughts on this, man.
Like, I knew they were going to finish the movie. And I understand why it's like, yeah, we need to kind of maybe finish the movie. But man, they honestly, it's kind of like the Carrie Fisher in Star Wars The Last Jedi. It's like she died before that movie was released. You should have written her out of it. And the same thing with Paul. Like, you should have had a way of killing him somehow in the movie. Like, I'm not saying like
they did it perfectly. There has never in the history of anything been done a better service than the way they handled Paul Walker's unexpected death in Furious.
How awesome would a part 8 have been if Dom was pissed that Paul's dead, that Brian's dead? And then you got a movie of him going and wrecking shop and being like Matthew McConaughey on True Detective in that helicopter scene where he's going apartment to apartment, you know?
Bro, but the scene with the Charlie Puth song and they drive off like that, though, bro, that doesn't get you every time.
Oh yeah, dude.
Dude, every time that gets me. That's one of the best done things. Like, you'd really trade that moment. And because here's the problem with Furious 7. All right, let's talk about it. Like, Furious 7 is the beginning of the end of this franchise in a lot of ways. And it all sucks because it's not fair and it shouldn't happen.
Furious 7 was the first one that it knew that it was on God level. Like, Furious 6 didn't know that yet about itself. It wasn't Furious 7 is very self-aware. Yeah, we know we're hot shit.
And the crazy thing is, if they'd been able to finish the movie they set out to make, it may have been just as good because CG was not in the plans. The car scene, the thing where they drop those things out of what really happened, dude.
James Wan was like, in the interview, he's like, you know, they said, you know, when I jump a car at the building, I said, it's never been done before. Let's do it.
Like, and the things out of the airplane, like the CG started coming in. There's a couple of reasons. Here's where the CG dominates the movie and kind of, you can tell that Paul's not there in a lot of that movie. Like, you know, you can just tell. Like, you can tell. And like, all the scenes where, you know, he's standing really far back and the camera is like real shaky and, you know.
It's very visible. I mean, it's one of those situations like when you see Dom and Brian looking at each other at the end and he's walking off and he's driving off and it's like smiling at him. And it's like they doctored up the stuff around that. They CG'd stuff that didn't need to be CG just to make it fit with the CG they were having to do on him, and it's clearly evident. But I love James Wan though, and so like, you know, some people don't like that guy for whatever reason. I don't understand. I've loved all of his movies. I love that he takes risks, and I think that if Paul wouldn't have died, that may have been the most fun we had in a Fast movie yet
Oh my
because
gosh.
because everybody was established, and it's like the moment you see The Rock, and man, the whole scene with The Rock's like with the Gatling gun in the middle of the street, that's awesome.
Dude, that movie, like,
Not the
I
only
love
thing
that.
that's wrong with it is that a tragedy happened. You know what I mean?
You're
Like
you're
that's
right.
really what was wrong with that movie and why it couldn't be made the way it was wanting to be made because of Paul dying. Because like I said, James
Now,
Wan, he understood that franchise when he took it on. He's like, "You want me to
had
do this? All right, I got it."
I think it would have been smarter to, because evidently, okay, here's a little something for you. So evidently, Paul Walker told Vin Diesel when they made Fast Five, and it did so well its first weekend, right? Like explodes. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
they had
because
no
people were back on
idea.
board, man.
They were on board like they'd never been before. They got on board for Fast like they do very few movies. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, and
And
and a part four, which is unheard of in a franchise to be like the
oh
one
my
that really
God,
brings in people.
like the fact that the fifth one, the sixth one, and the seventh one were all incrementally, it's like four, five, six, seven. Like that's what the box office numbers do. Like its opening weekend goes from here to here as well as final rate. And
Mm-hmm.
then, eight comes like right here, and then nine's pandemic. You really can't tell.
Well,
But
and
like,
well, seven had the whole. I hate to call it this or refer it to like this, but it had the whole complex that Batman or the Dark Knight suffered with the Heath Ledger
yeah.
thing. And
But I
excuse me, not
mean,
suffered. It actually helped it. Is what I meant to say. Is like
well,
people are like,
seven.
"Oh wow, I need to go see this just because this is the one that he died on."
But I do like what you said, because like the thing about part eight and part nine, and I guess since we're there and since we're at those parts now, like Hobbs and Shaw doesn't suffer from this for me. Like, Hobbs and Shaw feels like its own thing. But in eight, there is a Paul Walker sized hole that is unavoidable, and it just feels like, and I know that, like I was saying, then Paul Walker told Vin Diesel when they made the fifth one, it had the big opening weekend it did. He goes, "We're going to make 10 of these things." That is what he told him. And he was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, we're going to." So when they finished seven, they basically thought they were done. And then Vin got it in his head. No, I told Paul we were going to make 10 of these things. I'm gonna
Mm,
live out this promise.
right.
And so from
It should
what
have ended. It should have ended at seven.
it should have ended at seven, but he told Paul Walker plus ka-ching, these things are gold mines. And like what what I think you're seeing, the reason this last one's getting stretched into two parts, from what I can tell, is that the fallout in nine really messed with what The Rock thought Paul Walker would have wanted. And so he's trying to do more of. I know that he
The
right
fallout
now is,
meaning that the personal stuff between
yeah,
Vin and the okay.
Finn and The Rock, and Vin and Tyrese and The Rock had a thing too for a little bit. There was a bunch of it. It wasn't just Vin and but the amount of pressure. The Rock even came out as early as I think in January and said that he's not going to be in Fast 10. Um, but Vin Diesel came out on social media like 2 or 3 weeks ago and told, "Hey, my kids call you Uncle Dwayne. We have to finish this the right way." Like he's not letting this go. Like he's
Yeah.
still trying to get this man in this movie in some way, shape, or form.
As of a few weeks ago, The Rock says he still ain't doing it.
It's
I'd
what
love to see him come back for it, man, because I mean, I think it
I
would
think
only be
he's.
right.
I'm mad at him for not, like, whatever personal reasons he's got. Like he's got to remember about all of us out there who went out and watched these movies.
Well, and then that's at the it's a fine line of do you do it for always do it for the fans or do you still make yourself happy in life as well? And it's also too, are you at a point to where you don't have to do things just to do it? You can do it because you are who you are. And it is The Rock. I mean, he sort of does have that power now. Let me get to my
For sure he
clip
does.
here right now, or my comment. Matt says there's a clip where Paul gets frustrated when Vin thinks of franchises and trilogies. So I don't know what that means. Are you talking about that Paul or Vin never saw it going past 3 movies, or
he thinks of breaking into 3?
He thinks of every story needs to be told in 3 film increments. Maybe that's what you're saying. And I'm sure you'll answer us on that in a minute. But look, Fate of the Furious, I guess even if they could have ended it with that one, you still would have had the whole team in it, minus Paul Walker, and then you would have had this slew of films where there was the Black Sheep, which is part 3, part 2 that has Paul without Vin, and then part 8 that has Vin without Paul. Yeah, Vin is in Tokyo Drift, but it's for seconds, and it's at the very last seconds of the film. It's nothing a part of the movie. So I would have been satisfied and been like, okay, I'll let you do this last one. But when I saw F9 and when I saw Hobbs and Shaw coming out, I was like, okay, cool. They don't have Paul anymore. They're going to try to do some different things with these characters because everybody liked their little rivalry, which this movie, I feel like I loved a lot of it, but it could have been funnier. My biggest complaint is it wasn't as funny as I wanted it to be. The action was there, obviously, and I love Idris Elba. But, man, when I heard they were coming out with F9, I just was like, it was the first time I felt why about part 3, but now that I love this franchise again and all these things that happened with Paul Walker, I'm like, why, guys? Why? But now that you're telling me this stuff about Vin feeling the compelled and convicted to make this for Paul and to finish out the thing for Paul, I mean, look, I'm not going to take that away from somebody.
I'm not either. And I mean, I imagine there's got to be something to this because, like, all right, when you really go and you dig into the movies, right? Like when you go back and especially when you go look at part 4, right? Actually, we can take it back to part 1 because it starts earlier. So in part 1, Cohen and the crew, or like Cohen's part 2, the director in the first one is I know that Scott What's-His-Face is involved in writing all of them. But they go to Jordana Brewster and they go to Michelle Rodriguez and ask them flat out, like, hey, does this sound like something you think your character would say or not? And they help them rewrite page by page what they felt like their character would say in each moment. And they did that again, in 2, yeah, but like in part 4 and in part 5. And so like these actors really like wrote out their own characters. And I can't imagine what it would be like to be Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Bridges, Vin Diesel, whoever, and you have these characters that you helped build and make that are now one of the top 10 franchises of all time.
Yeah.
And your best friend just got killed. But like the thing, I heard somebody say this, one of my closest friends in the entertainment industry actually told me this, that they thought that Paul Walker's death, as tragic as it was, and was also a beautiful thing because Paul Walker went out doing what Paul Walker loved doing.
Sure.
And I'm not here to say that that's like, something the family would, ever want to hear or anything like that. But there is some poetry to going out and doing what you love, for sure.
Hey,
and like,
click in and click back. Yeah. Or click out and click back in if you can, because you're chopping.
Okay.
I don't know if there's something with your connection or what, but you look like you're freeze framing constantly. Sorry, gotta wait for old Clint to see if this ad's right here. That's a little better, yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, Paul Walker.
But he went out doing what he loved, right? He was in it, and so I was told by somebody in the industry that there's some solace in that allows you to be able to go on, because this was all of their babies too.
Oh yeah. No, for sure, and that was part of what we loved about watching it, at least up until part 6, is that they were all really truly got along and loved each other. Obviously, some feuds started happening later on in the franchise and not in the personal stuff, but I mean, look, you even have the
It
big boys
started.
of like Statham joining the crew. You know, you
Yeah.
got Charlize Theron joining the crew. You got Helen Mirren joining the crew. I mean, it's becoming like the who's who, kind of like the MCU or Harry Potter. You know, like every actor's wanting to get involved with this now.
It's you know what I heard or
Oh,
what I
John
read.
Cena.
John Cena. What I read today is that the rift between The Rock and Vin Diesel started because of Vin Diesel's skits on SNL.
So, well, see, I didn't, I was very, and this is coming from multiple sources that I've always heard it was about Vin showing up late, and like
Okay.
The Rock is extremely punctual, and was
I
starting to get pissed because it was like hour and a half, 2 hours late.
I saw that he had a song where he said he was on SNL where he was Viagra for series and like
Yeah, Rock is. Yeah, they've called him that. Like he's not the only one that's. He wasn't the first person
sure.
to say that.
But he said that, and then also there was some episode of Ballers that he filmed where they were like, "Hey, are you Vin Diesel?" And he was like, "No, I'm much bigger and better looking." And those two things made Vin upset coming onto the set of Set 8.
So, which is
And
why he was showing up late and stuff like that.
that's what I read. Yeah.
Yeah, well, grow up. Sorry, buddy. You can't take a hit on the shoulder and take. Sorry, that's ridiculous. If that's true.
If that's true, but you never know. I mean, it doesn't. Vin Diesel, the guy who wrote and basically sacrificed his lungs and life and sold his kidneys and God knows what else to get Boiler Room made, doesn't strike me as the type of cat to go through all that petty bullshit either. Like that is
That's
those
what.
two
Yeah,
character
that's what
types.
I'm saying. That's why I prefaced it with if that's true.
Yeah, like so. Who knows what actually happened or not? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
my
but something
hope
did happen.
something did happen. My hope is that it's now mostly all the world's a stage type stuff, so we can have a big reveal in part 10 where Vin Diesel, The Rock shows up.
Oh, dude, yeah. Look, just give me him back for the finale, and then I'm good. Then it's like he never left. You know what I mean? It's cool. We just had we had a movie where he wasn't in it, but we also had another movie where he was in it that the other weren't, which was Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah,
Um,
give me that movie where he's back, and then if you're gonna bring Han back and Letty back and death doesn't matter anymore, give me Gal Gadot in the finale, man. I want bring Gal Gadot back. You know,
I mean, that'd be cool. I just, man, she got blown up.
we don't
But
know.
so
We
did
didn't
Han.
see.
But so did Han.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Han's come back, what, 50 times, and there's only 8 or 9 movies?
Han's like Loki, bro.
Look, Han, at this point, I think he's going to get frozen in carbonite.
That fuzzy looking nerf herder.
Yeah, that fuzzy nerf herder. Well, look, I had fun watching F9 in the theater because it was the first movie I saw with a big audience right post, the C word. They don't, post the Corona deal. And people were like, I saw Tenet, but nobody was in the theater. You know what I mean? This
Yeah,
one, it was
exactly.
packed. So, like, it had its own fun things because of that. But,
For sure.
it just, I couldn't help but feel, and everybody knows, I mean, even they're very self-aware of how ridiculous it was. But I mean, it has to still be like
In the theater, I loved
somebody.
it, bro. In the theater, I had a blast.
That's what I'm saying. You're with everybody and you're having a good time.
Yeah.
But rewatching it, it's just like, how do you guys? Come on, this is too much. It's silly. The rocket engines on the Civic, hatchback. I mean, it was just too much, man. And look, Tyrese and Ludacris cracked me up, dude. To me, they were hilarious the entire movie. They were really making me laugh. But bringing back the two guys from Tokyo Drift, and I felt like, all right, it feels the way Endgame felt, where it's just like they're finally all together. It didn't feel the way it was supposed to feel in F9. They were going for that vibe. It's like, oh, Bow Wow's here with. It just was like, oh, everybody, okay, let's have the audience applause for him real quick. You know what I mean? That's what it felt like. It felt patronizing. So
I'm a Tokyo Drift purist. I think a lot of it also has to do with, like I told you, there was this guys between the years of 2006 2007. In 2009, I lived in Austin, Texas, and I worked on 6th Street as a bartender, and all I did was get wasted and wake up hungover, like, and watch a movie, and then go back to work and do it again, right? Like, okay, there's more to it than that, but there was a lot of nights it was like,
I know what you mean, though. I mean, I had that part of my life as well.
and so in those moments there, that was one of the movies that I had on DVD that was on repeat. So I had like this really soft spot for it. But also being said, and I've already apologized for Tokyo Drift quite a bit in this, but like, I hated in F9 how they made the Sean Boswell character and the Bow Wow character seem so goofy, almost like thrown off. Like those kooks over there with their remote controlled, rocket ship car.
Right,
like,
that's what I'm saying, and it felt very
They
much
weren't-
like in
when
a
we
sitcom
left,
when somebody makes their appearance.
exactly. When I agree with you, like when we left Sean Boswell, okay, he was the new Drift King in Tokyo, which, by the way, was tied to the Yakuza. Like that guy is not.
And he even he seems like a different. The only thing that seems like the same character is that he looks the same and he talks the same, but he didn't. He was kind of a badass in Tokyo Drift. You know what I mean?
He absolutely was. He had no fear whatsoever. Like,
yeah, this one was obviously made to make some money, and they were.
The Bow Wow character is such a hustler in that movie. Like, there's no way that he'd be dressed like that in those moments. Like,
and yeah, no, I'm with you. And it just, again, I'm not dogging on him. People age, but he looks a lot older than you would expect him to look. And I think that with, part 4, 5, and 6, they're like, dude, we have these awesome stories. We're ready to tell these. Whereas with F9 and F8, they're like, okay, let's, what can we come up with?
Yeah, what do you got? Exactly.
What do we got? There's nothing like hemorrhaging from the writers' rooms that's like trying to get through the doors. Like, this has got to be told, guys. Listen to this. It's awesome. It's just like digging for ideas. And like I said before, F9 makes the submarine and F8 coming out of the snow covered or the ice covered lake. It makes it believable.
Yeah,
it's so unbelievable in F9.
At the very least, surreal.
Do you think that they'll because this one was so over the top, F9, it feels like it was a send-off movie because they're like, hey, screw it, guys, it's the last one, let's just go balls out. But obviously it's not. Do you think they're going to go super balls off the walls in F10 or FX or Fast X, whatever it's called, or are they going to reel it back and make it more serious? Yes, Fast 10, your seatbelts. That's good. Do you think they're going to reel it back?
No, I don't. I think
they're going to just go.
I think they'll mistakenly just. God knows.
Well, look, either way will get me into the theater. I'm not going to lie. I'm it won because it's the 10th one. But if it looks like it's going to be super ridiculous at this point, I'll go into it and be like, all right, how ridiculous can they be? Because
I've heard that they are talking about. Or there was some stuff on the internet kicking around for a little while that Universal was contemplating blending the Jurassic World universe.
Oh, yeah, no. And I heard about that. I did hear about that. That's a whole video on its own. Hey, with that being said, it's we're like 3.5, 4 minutes over an hour, and I just kind of like to keep it around.
You want to do your
rankings? Yeah, so for me, it's 4, 5, 6, 7.
Wait, hold on. Are we doing order from the top to the bottom?
Yeah, best to worst. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 8, 9, 2, 3.
Okay. I go 5, 4, 6, 7. And then 1, 3, Hobbs and Shaw, 2, 8, 9.
I didn't put Hobbs and Shaw in there, but I'd have to put Hobbs and Shaw right before 8.
Isn't it so funny that Tokyo Drift's your last place and like it's just right behind part 1 for me?
Yeah, hey, but look, that's the beauty of all this stuff, and I want everybody to always say how they feel. There's nothing worse than someone just playing along because they want to fit in. I love the this is why, and this is why you do and don't. So, hey guys, thank y'all so much for joining us on this one. I know we went a little over an hour. I like to keep it tight and short, but hey, it just had to be done. So
Family.
we got some stuff coming up. I'm working on. You probably can't really tell back here, but I've changed my background up a little bit, and I've got my whole little diorama set up of my horror characters over here. You maybe kind of see a little bit, but I'll send. I'm going to do a whole video actually and put it on the channel and just kind of do a cool thing showing it all. But I'm excited. But we got some streams we're going to be talking about coming up soon. As far as me, Clint, me, Andrew, me and my buddy Anshul, we're doing a Incredible Hulk or She-Hulk episode 3 breakdown tomorrow. And we're going to do a House of Dragon episode over the weekend as well. So be on the lookout for that, guys. And y'all have a great evening. Thanks for joining me, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, dog. See you later, Bobby.
All right, man. Laters. And guys, remember, if life gives you lemons, make some hot, fresh popcorns. Oh, yeah.